Hi, I'm David Bellamy. One of the joys of working in the Arab world is engaging with people. Some of the most humorous, interesting, hospitable and characterful characters I've ever met are in the Middle East. And with outstanding desert and mountain scenery, the ostentatious Islamic architecture, the colourful souks, and so much more have all inspired me to write this book, Arabian Light. Also, I wish to counter the false impression put across by much of the Western media about this intriguing region. When I first visited Egypt in 1966, I was travelling overland to East Africa and sailed across Lake Nasser and up the Upper Nile on a battered ex-cattle barge. The refreshments bar comprised just an Alibaba pot with warm water, and I lived on bananas, biscuits and bars of chocolate for several days and slept on the wooden roof well away from the rats in the hole. And the other passengers were very kind. They plied me with tea, and they just couldn't recall ever seeing a European doing this journey before. Many years later, I returned to Egypt, and Islamic Cairo intrigued me. Subjects were everywhere, donkey carts with wonky wheels, and women carrying the most amazing things on their heads. Picturesque characters appearing from nowhere, all tumbling straight out of the Arabian Nights. Sometimes when seeing me sketch, whether they were Bedouin, Berbers or Bashi Bazouks, they would ask for a portrait of themselves. And I often do two, one for myself and one I give to the other person, who usually folds up the portrait into four and stuffs it up his jalaba. The humour and the kindness of the Egyptian people shone everywhere. At Luxor Temple, I found two guards and began to sketch them at night time. They came over to see what I was doing, and I showed them the sketch and tried to get them back into position, but they didn't understand. And so Jenny, my wife, went over to where they'd stood and beckoned them back over there. And intrigued, they went over and stood by her, but at the same time they adopted these ridiculous stances. So I had to, they were holding their rifles as though they were agricultural accessories. So I moved over and I took their rifles and put them into a better position, a more guard-like position, and alerted by all this kerfuffle, many more guards appeared, and I was really concerned that I'd have a whole battalion of them to pay after it was over. So anyway, we managed to shoo them all away. I just had the two guards, and the resulting sketch was a bit of a mess, but it did capture the event quite well, and the two chaps were quite happy with their tip. In Jordan, the highlight is, of course, the ancient city of Petra, where there were few people when we arrived because of the impending Iraq War. So we had plenty of room to manoeuvre and sketch, and it was absolutely fabulous working on those buildings. Unlike David Roberts and Edward Lear in the 19th century, when they had to scarper very quickly because of the Bedouin. Whilst in Oman, we have some of the most stupendous mountain scenery, and on many evenings, sketching the fiery sunsets with the muezzins calling across the valley from the many villages as they called people to prayer. These were intensely moving moments. In Lebanon, I journeyed out to the ancient Roman city of Baalbek, in the heart of Hezbollah country, and sure enough, as I arrived, Hezbollah were waiting for me. The gentleman said, "What size Hezbollah t-shirt would you like?" And I said, "Well, what colours have you got?" Wondering how it might impress the security at Heathrow Airport on my return. "Only yellow," he said. Sadly, yellow is not my colour. There were encounters with belly dancers. Naively, I thought that belly dancing was a non-contact sport. And then sailing on dhows and expeditions deep into the heart of the desert, even to the Sudan and Libyan borders, and through the mind-blowing white desert with all its amazing white sculptured rocks sculpted by the wind, and in the dead as night approaches, even those massive ice cream cones the size of bus shelters take on a menacing aspect. A major highlight of the expedition was the Carca Valley with its rock art, a place so dry and far into the desert that even camels wouldn't survive there. And we followed in the ways of the long-range desert group of World War II fame and up through the Great Sand Sea and into Siwa Oasis, an amazing trip. The book also covers the early explorers such as Richard Burton, Charles Montague Doughty, Freya Stark, Gertrude Bell, Wilfrid Thesiger, and one of my favourites, Lady Jane Digby, who, after marrying, eloped with an Austrian prince, and then she married a German baron. She had a wild affair with the King of Bavaria, and before departing for Eastern lands, she indulged in a romantic fling with an Albanian general. She eventually settled down in Syria, sketching, painting and exploring, and there she married Sheikh Medjouel El Mehab. Also featured are the Orientalist painters who have left such an amazing visual record of the Middle East. Many have been reviled for their depiction of harem and hammam scenes where they were inhabited by naked women. And these were mainly male artists. Yet one of the most fascinating painters of Eastern women was the Danish Elizabeth Jericho Baumann, whose models looked far more like the local females, and also she embodied a more confident and sensuous appearance, unlike those of her male colleagues, whose females often had less appeal than an artist's wooden lay figure. Although her admirers included Queen Victoria and Napoleon, many of her paintings were in fact deemed to be too erotic and were hidden away for many years by the Danish museum curators. The book will be published by Search Press in May.